All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to another edition of Creating Real Estate Millionaires, Minority Real Estate Millionaires. I'm your host, Mr. Ray, and we're going to talk about how to analyze some deals today. This is the bread and butter. This is where you make the money. This is where you understand how to do deals and how to do them properly. So I sent out a little quiz for everybody. Unfortunately, nobody got it right. I was a little bit surprised no one got it right, but we're going to go through the math, and I need you to make sure you understand how we get to where we're getting to, okay? So again, there are no dumb questions, people. There are no dumb questions. There's no dumb people on this call either. I already verified that. If you're on this call, you're not dumb. So any question you ask is okay. So let's see, somebody's not muted. That would be, let me mute everybody. All right, now we're good. Okay, let's go. So ground rules, as usual, make sure you stay muted during the call so you don't interrupt the other participants. Again, I got to get some questions. I expect a lot of questions tonight. You guys got to come on in with some questions so you can get this stuff down. And then always provide me feedback on how I can get better on this call. So this week's quiz, here were the assumptions. So we said the ARV, which is the after repair value, was $100,000. The banks will lend up to 75% of the loan to value. LTV means loan to value. I'm going to explain both of these terms in specificity in a lot of detail, so I want to make sure you get it. The mortgage that I'm proposing is about 20 years at 5%. That's typical today. Closing costs about $4,000. That's about right on $100,000. And we're going to assume the repairs were $10,000, which is medium kind of rehab there. Up to $10,000 to me is more, you know, it's going to be carpet, painting, changing out some, a few things to make sure you get the property ready to go. And this also assumption, we said $1,000 is the monthly rent, which is about right. We always say we use the 1% rule. 1% rule on rent means that the rent should be at least 1% of what the ARV is. In this case, it's $100,000, so the rent is $1,000. We're going to assume that annual tax is $900, insurance $840, vacancy rate is, we're going to say 5%, so 5% of 1,000, excuse me, yes, 5% of 1,000 would be 600, and we're going to say our repairs are going to come in around 1,200. All right, so those are the assumptions. And we're going to solve for the following. We're going to solve for what is the maximum allowable offer as an investor that you can offer on this property, MAO. We're also going to determine what the monthly mortgage payment is going to be on the loan, which is 75% loan to value. We're going to look at our net cash flows. That's where we make the money at, baby. That's the money that we get every month after everything has been paid for. And then we're going to look at the net operating income. Some investors like to look at that, but most investors want to look at what's my return on investment. All right, so we'll go through that. All right, after repair value. This is where a lot of people get strung up and hung up when we talk about after repair value. So what is the after repair value, Mr. Ray? Well, it's like 3 or 4 different things. So stay with me, and I want to make sure you ask questions on this. So it's the value of the property after it's been improved, renovated, or fixed up. So after you fix it up, that's the after repair value. But that's not the only thing that's the after repair value. The after repair value is also could be the appraised value, whatever the bank says that it's worth. When they issue an appraisal, the appraisal comes back and the bank says this is what it's worth. That's the after repair value. The after repair value is also the market value, which is what are people willing to pay for that property? The appraisal could come in at 100, but people are only willing to give you 98,000 for it. So, you know, between those two, that's the after repair value. The value that you actually sell it for, that's the after repair value. And then the after repair value is determined, can be determined by what the houses in that area are selling for. We call those comparables. What are the comps? What are the comparables in that area? So that's after repair value. So I need to stop right there and let you ask questions. Does anybody not get after repair value, or you have any questions? This is very key right here. You must understand what after repair value is. The market value, it's the appraised value, it's what people are willing to pay for that house. All right, hearing no questions, I'm going to continue on. Loan to value. Let's understand what loan to value is. Loan to value is simply whatever percentage of the ARV, we just determined what the ARV is, right? The after repair value. It's whatever percentage that banks are willing to loan you on the investment value, on the investment property. So typically that's anywhere between 70 or 80%. That's what banks would normally loan on. In our assumption, we said that the loan to value is 75%. So we take 75% times our $100,000 ARV, come up with 75K. That's the loan to value. Any questions? All right. Now let's talk about the 1% rule. The 1% rule, this is the rule that I use whenever I'm looking at property. If I'm looking at a property, the first thing I'm going to do is see, okay, how much am I paying for it as far as the after repair value? How much is it really worth? I'm going to take that times 1%, and that's going to give me a rough idea of what I should be able to get in rent. Now, I have to go back and do some research and find out actually how much people are getting for rent in that area to make sure that the 1% rule is good. But the 1% rule is just a gauge. It's just something that I use to start the discussion whether I'm even interested in this property, right? And some people will use the purchase price as the 1% rule, but I always use the ARV. So any questions on the 1% rule? Okay. All right, here we go. So now the first thing we're going to do is solve for the maximum allowable offer. Okay. So in our example, here's the formula. The LTV percentage, in this case, we're going to use 75% because that's what I told you it was. So we're going to say 75% of the after repair value minus the cost of repairs is going to give you the maximum amount of money that you can offer on this property. Again, our assumption is the property, after it's been repaired, is going to be worth $100,000. So therefore, we're saying the loan to value is going to be $75,000. That's what we can get a loan on the property for, $75,000. Well, again, the assumption is 10% for repairs. If you do it this way, here's what it looks like. So you got the $75,000, which is your 75% loan to value, minus the repairs, minus the closing costs, gives you my maximum allowed offer. All right. Any questions? Some of you got wrong right here. You went off. I don't think you added in the closing costs. Always assume for purposes of whenever I give you a quiz that the closing costs are always going to be included as part of what you're going to be financing. Okay. So some of you got off there. Make sure you include the $4,000 for closing.
In previous videos, what I looked at, you added the closing, it went up. So that's why I put 69 instead of going down. So I'm a little confused by that.
Well, this is in the maximum allowable offer. So if you can go back and find that video and send it to me, send it to me. This should be the formula. Because what you're doing is you're saying, the bank's only gonna give me 75,000. I'm gonna have 10,000 in repairs and I'm gonna have 4,000 in closing costs. So if I subtract that all out, that means I can only offer you 61,000 because I'm gonna have to add in the closing costs and the repairs when I'm looking at my financing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, before go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I didn't have anything else. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my confusion was the equation. I found the equation, and then I forgot the minus the 4K. Because even at the top, this equation here, LTV minus cost of repairs, I got the 65K, but I forgot the 4K.
Hey, that's a good point. I should have put it in my formula up here. So I did. You're exactly right. I left it out. So let me change that real quick so as not to confuse. Now, in fact, I won't change it now.
So for me,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, for me, when watching the video, it stated it was nearly the same formula. It was basically 15 instead of the 10. So you take that out of it. So for me, I was taking the 10 out, and then you said add the 4,000 for closing into what you're getting the loan for.
Yeah,
so that's what made mine 69.
Yeah,
because you're right. So that's why I was financing it in instead of subtracting it for the max allowable.
Okay. So is everybody clear now? Or have I totally confused you? So I'm going to add this in, negative closing. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. Now we're back. So I added in closing. So you're right. I missed that one. I just automatically did that in my mind and I didn't put it there. So here we go. Go through it again. So there's our assumptions on the value. We need it. Okay, now are we clear as mud?
Yes, sir.
Everybody good? So we know throughout the rest of this presentation, we're going to be using 61K as our maximum allowable offer. All right, let's keep going. Now, the next thing we got to do is our monthly mortgage payment. Okay. So again, so the financed amount is going to be the 100,000. We're going to add in the closing costs, and then we're going to multiply that times 75%, because that's what the bank's going to give us, right? And so most banks won't finance the $10,000 repairs, right? You're going to have to do those on your own. They normally will not finance that. So if you look at 78,000 that's refi at 5% for 20 years, the payment will be $514. You say, well, how'd you get that, Ray? All right, let me show you. So if I go over to my, and I can give you guys a copy of this. This is an amortization schedule inside of inside Excel. So you just put the amounts here. For instance, if it was 50,000, and it will tell you what the payment will be right there. So we'll make that, let's make that yellow also. All right, so in this case, it's $78,000 at 5% for 20 years. That's the payment. All right, you get that? Anybody got any questions? If you need that spreadsheet, just text me and I'll send that to you. All right, so who got this right? Nobody. You know why you didn't get it right? Because you didn't add in the closing costs, right? Remember I told you we're going to finance in the closing costs here. And if you didn't finance in the closing costs, then I'm not going to dock you for that. Because if you'd have got, say, 75 instead of 78, then it would have been a little bit different here on what your monthly payment would be. But for purposes of our example, in the future, when I send you one, just go ahead and just add in the closing costs and then add in the closing costs and your maximum allowable offer. I just like to do that. Questions?
Mr. Ray, so do banks, they'll finance the closing cost?
Yes. When you do your home mortgage, they'll finance the closing costs. When you do investment property, they'll finance the closing costs. Now, the banks I deal with, there may be some banks that won't. And, you know, banks change all the time, what they'll do and what they won't do. Some of them like you to bring money to the table and they say, no, we're only going to do 75% or 100,000. We want you to bring 4,000 to close it, to cover the closing costs. But most banks will finance, because $4,000 is not that much more, you know, at the end of the day. And so if you don't want to come out of any money out of pocket, I always ask them, just include the closing costs. And I never had anybody say, no, we don't want to do the closing costs in there. Okay. All right, everybody, is that clear as mud? So again, 78,000 financed for 20 years at 5% is 514.75. That will be your principal and interest payment on this particular property. All right, moving on. So now we got to figure our net cash flows. We know what our maximum allowable offer is. We know everything we need in order to figure these net cash flows. So let's start. Let's see what we get here. So we know we got $1,000 in gross rent. The principal and interest is $514.75. We just figured that. Taxes, I gave you what the annual was. All you got to do is divide it by 12 and you'll get the monthly. The insurance, the vacancy rate, the maintenance, all that adds up to $809. That's all your expenses going to be coming out of that gross rent. So when you subtract your $809 from your $1,000, you get $190.25 as your net cash flow for the month. Any question?
Yeah, how did you know to include the P&I, the mortgage, the monthly mortgage payment?
How did I know to include it?
Yeah. Like what assumption did you make besides your experience?
No, that's the formula. The formula is gross rent less all your expenses equals your net cash flow. That's a formula. Gross rent negative principal and interest, taxes, insurance, vacancy, and maintenance. That's the formula for figuring your net cash flow.
So when you put that mortgage monthly, when it said 1,000, you didn't mean that for this equation.
That is the gross rent on this property, $1,000.
Gotcha. Okay, I see that. Okay.
You see? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions on that? Good questions. You guys are asking good questions. These are all good. And we're going to make it clear. So that's the net cash flow. So that's the number we're going to be using throughout the rest of the time when we're figuring our returns and everything else. So next one is net operating income. So let's define what that is. So the net operating income is all the money that you're making from operating that particular house excluding what you're paying for the loan, the debt service. Just say it another way, here's the formula. The net operating income equals the gross rent less all your expenses except for your mortgage. Okay? All right, so let's see what that looks like. So we got our gross rent at $1,000. Here are all of our expenses, the same expenses that we just had on the previous page, right? Except for what? What are we leaving out? We don't have the mortgage in there, the principal and interest. So now you get to see what that net operating income looks like. So now it's $705. If you multiply that times the 12 months, then your net operating income is $8,400. Any questions? And investors like to see this. This is how much money I'm making before I start talking about the debt that I put on the property. So this property right here is throwing off some good money, $8,400 a month, before I add in what I'm going to be paying on my principal and interest. Questions? Net operating income. All right, return on investment. This is a key one right here, because this basically says, you know, how much money am I making on the money that I got invested? So return on investment looks like that. It equals the annual net cash flows. Remember, we figured what the monthly net cash flow was. You make it annual, you multiply it by 12. So the annual net cash flows divided by however much money you put into the game, right? Whatever, however much money you got in the deal, that's what you're going to use as your denominator. So in this case, we had $25,000 that we put down, remember, as the down payment. And then we also had $10,000 in repairs that we had to come out of our pocket. So we got $35,000 in the game. Again, remember, we financed the $4,000 in the loan. So we don't have to come out of pocket with that. That's part of the loan. So when you look at it, so we take our $190.25, which was our monthly, and we multiply that times 12, and we get what the annual cash flows are on that property. So it's just your monthly multiplied by 12, gives you your annual. Now that you have your annual, you take your annual 2,283, you divide it by your 35,000, and that gives you a return on investment of 15% on that $35,000 that you put up. Okay, and that's a really, really good return on investment. And that's what I look for as a minimum on any property I get. I want to at least get about 15% return on my money. Any questions? This is
Mr. Ray?
Yeah.
So I got a dumb question. So the 25K assumption is the 100K minus 75K to get to 25K?
Well, remember, the bank was only gonna loan you 75% of that 100,000, right?
Yes, sir.
And so that means that other 25 is what you had to come up with to put as a down payment.
Okay, so all right, I assume correctly. Okay, all right.
Yeah, so the bank is gonna make you put up $25,000 to get $75,000 to cover that $100,000.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Questions? All right, let's go to the next one. So, I mean, that's pretty much everything that we had on analyzing property. I want to talk about the burst strategy and how it would apply to this particular deal. So the burst strategy basically says that you want to buy properties at 30 to 60% of ARV. You basically want to buy properties wholesale. Remember, we talked about, we did, I'm getting confused. That's the advance that we talked about, the wholesale. But really, you want to buy a property 30, 60% of ARV, no more than 70% of the ARV. And then you want to rehab it up to the 75%, right? Because if you buy it at 75%, now you don't really have any room, any equity room in there, right? So you want to make sure that you're buying at 30, 60% of ARV. You want to make sure that the rent that you're getting is at least 1% of the ARV. And then when you refi, you want to get all of your money back because you've only went up to that 75%. Therefore, you should be able to get all your money back if you're paying cash in this particular case. Right? In the burst strategy, I'm going to show you how it works when you pay cash and how you get when you get bank financing. And then the next R is you just repeat and use that same money again. So let's look at it. So here's the burst strategy on the quiz that we just did. So we're going to use the same after repair value, $100,000. We're going to use our MAO. We're saying the maximum that we're going to pay for this property, even though it's going to be worth $100,000 when we're done. In order for us to make money in the Burtis thing, we can only pay $65,000 for it. Remember, we're going to have $10,000. We're going to assume $10,000 in repairs and holding costs, which means that it's going to be a total cash investment of $75,000. So how much we're going to be in this game for?
Mr. Ray?
Yes.
I thought the MAO was 61,000.
Hold on. Did I pick up the wrong price? I did. Good cash. Hold on, let me change it. That's going to change my whole slide though.
We could pretend that it's 65.
Good catch. Who is this? You're gonna get some. Who is it? Who called me?
It's Kendra.
Kendra, you called me. We're gonna also blame Lila. She checked this slide before I put it out there. She's my editor in chief, so we're gonna catch her. So okay, let's just assume it's 65 for this purpose. But you're right, it's 61 in our example. Good catch, Kendra. And so we're going to assume that after 1 to 3 months, after repairs is completed, that we're going to refi this property for $75,000, right? Because the bank's going to give me 75% of the $100,000 ARV, and I'm going to refi it for 20 years, and that's going to be my payment. And so again, this is where I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to assume I'm going to rent it for this. My expenses are going to be this. And that's going to be my net cash flow. So that's BRRRR. That's how you would BRRRR this property for cash. Questions? Other than I'm off 4,000 on my MAO. So that'll change the formula a little bit, but it'll only change this number right here, right? Rather than 75,000 on the refi, it would be what, $4,000 less? Yes. So this payment will go down a little bit. Any questions? Okay. All right, so let's use this same example. Let's say we didn't use cash, but we use hard money. Really, when you use hard money, it's like using cash, but it's a little different because you're borrowing this money from a hard money lender who's going to be charging you that money, and you're going to take that money and you're going to go and pay cash for the property, right? And then you're going to refinance it later. So let's look at it. So hard money, they'll loan you up to 70% of the ARV. Hard money people will. So the hard money is going to be 70% less the purchase price, less the repairs, less the closing costs, just like we did just a minute ago, right? So that's going to give us our maximum allowable offer. So in this case, we're going to say the 70% of ARV is 70,000 based on 100,000 ARV. I got it right here, Kendra. 61, baby. I got it right on this slide. And then repairs for 10,000, closing costs 4,000 again. So you got 75,000 in the game. But remember, the hard money guy only gave you 70,000. So you got 5,000 of your own money in this, right? And then when you look at it, you say, okay, I got two options here. One option, if you want to do the BRRRR, we're going to turn around and refinance that $100,000 at 75%, 5% for 20 years, and I'm going to pay that $70,000 back to this hard money lender. And now I've still got $5,000 in the deal. But I got a house, it's up and running, it's doing everything, and I'm in for $5,000. That's a pretty good deal. Now, the second option I could do, I could flip this, right? Now, I got a house that's worth $100,000. I go and pay that hard money lender out. That means I'm assuming I sold this for $100,000. Sold it for $100,000. I paid the $70,000 back to the hard money lender, and now I got $30,000 profit, less whatever it cost me to sell it, realtor fee, closing fees, and all that. So this is two ways I could do this deal. I could use it and do a buy and hold, which is what I like to do, option one, or I could flip the property. Any questions? Hard money is just like cash. The only difference is it's going to cost you to borrow that money from a hard money lender. They're going to want you to pay 10 to 12 to 15% on that money for those 3 months that you're fixing that property up. All right, no questions. So let's look at this same example. Now I want to purchase this with bank financing, right? We're going to use the same thing. The ARV is 100,000. We're going to get the bank's going to give us 75% of that, which means you're going to have to come up with 25,000, right? There's that down payment, Darren, that we talked about. You're in it for 25,000. Banks say, I ain't gonna give you 100,000. I'm only gonna give you 75, because the house only worth $100,000. So you got to come up with the 25 to buy this house. And there's also the 4,000 closing costs, assuming they might just go ahead and finance that in with you, which most of them will. And then you got the 10,000 repair costs. A lot of times they won't put that in there, right? You won't get that. So again, what's our finance amount? The 100K plus the 4,000 closing, 78,000 is what we're going to finance, because they won't finance the 10,000 closing costs. Again, we're back. So that's the bank financing piece of it. If you're going to finance it, that's how you would do that deal. Any questions? I know I'm saying the same thing 4 or 5 different ways just to get you to see how it works with financing, with bank financing, with the hard money loan, and with cash. All right, here's the good stuff right here. On this particular house, I'm going to show you how you got paid 5 ways. Let's get in there, baby. We get paid 5 ways on this house. The first way we're going to get paid on this house, I'm just going to assume that over a year, that house is going to appreciate 1%. So I had a $100,000 house. Now it's going to be worth $101,000. So just stay with me there. Let's just assume I got $1,000 in appreciation over that 1 year. Now, also over that year, I was paying on that loan. Remember, I was paying $514 a month on that thing. So I paid down that loan, which is the principal part of it, over $2,200. But I also captured some equity. The house was worth $100,000, and I only paid $75,000 for it. That's with my maximum allowed offer and all that, $75K. So I actually have captured $25,000 in equity the minute I own that house. It's worth $100,000. I only got a $75,000 loan on it. I'm $25,000 to the good, baby, in equity capture. But not only that, I get to write off all that stuff that I paid, all that property tax, the repair, the interest, insurance, and I get that depreciation also included. So that's worth $10,000 right there. So that's the 4th way I got paid. And then the final way I got paid, baby, I got them net cash flows and all that was paid for by the tenant. When you add all that up, I'm $40,000 added in value the first year alone by purchasing that property. And you say, wow, Mr. Ray, that's incredible. That's how real estate millionaires are made, baby, right there. You do that enough times, you're going to be a millionaire.
Mr. Ray?
Yes.
So on the tax write-off, is that seen as a tax credit or is it a
Is this Kendra?
Yes. Sorry.
Another good question. I'm gonna show you. I'm glad you asked that because I'm gonna show you what it looks like on your taxes. Any other questions? Because I'm gonna answer that one. That's a good question. Who's got some more questions before I go on to the tax piece of
it? It's unrelated, but my question is, I haven't had any luck finding banks that would approve for small loans under 50,000, specifically 25,000. Would you go to a hard money lender for that?
It's not worth their time, Darren. They say it's not worth their time to give you a little loan. They can't make any money on that.
Yeah.
Because your payment's gonna be what, $80 a month on $40,000 over 30 years? They can't make no money on you. They don't have time for little people.
That makes sense. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. What other questions you got before I show you this tax thing?